for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk Now Radio, listener-supported radio, where no topic is taboo, and your support helps to keep it that way. This is your host, Royce, the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me tonight is going to be David Rountree and Robbie Lunt, and I actually put his name on the page. It's Robert. I hope you don't mind. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody, if you've got any questions, you can call in at 832-632-7904. If anybody's listening at the site, you can always type a question in the chat if you like. We're always happy to answer any questions you got, unless for some reason specified. I have had a few guests that have mentioned that they prefer not to be interrupted during the show, so I try to accommodate them, but that's not very often. Now, if you want to learn more about the book Demon Street that we're talking about tonight, you can go to www.spininvestigations.org. And David, what would be another URL that they could go to learn more about it?
Actually, the best URL to go to, because there's not much about it on my website, we have a book website. It's demonstreetusa.com.
That's what I was doing wrong. I remember the last time we did this show on Revolution Radio that it said demonstreet.com, but I missed the USA part.
Yeah, it's demonstreetusa.com. No www either. It's just demonstreetusa.com.
That would explain why I couldn't find the site.
That would.
And while these two are, sharing their bit, I'm going to try to Google over or slide over to their site real quick and paste this into the chat room here in a few minutes, so you guys might want to keep your eyes peeled. I guess, Robbie, I'll start with you, since I might have messed up your name on the top of the web page there. Does it matter to you if it's Robert or Robbie?
It really doesn't in the long run. Prefer Robbie, but Robert's fine, and Bob's my dad, so.
I got no clue why I typed it that way. I guess I see so many Robs, Robbies, Bobs, and Roberts and that at some point they become a whole C when I'm typing. If that makes any sense. But
Robbie has that effect on people.
Well, like I mentioned to you earlier while we were waiting for the show to start, this time I've actually had a chance to finish your book, Demon Street. And if I remember correctly, I've already put y'all a review over at Amazon. I had to stop and think about which word I was looking for. I think I did that before the last show. So why don't we start real quick with, say, David, you can tell us a little something about what you were hoping to achieve, at least from your end, in writing this book.
Well, that's a very complex question. Amazingly, we couldn't write the book back in 1985 after the event happened, simply because there was no market for it. It was a taboo subject. You didn't talk about demonic possession or ghosts or anything else back in 1985, because people would have you Baker acted in Florida as being a lunatic. So there wasn't really a market for it. We really were in no condition to write the book back then. We didn't have the writing skills. We didn't have the wisdom. We didn't have the knowledge that we have today. So we knew that eventually one day we would write it, but we were in no hurry to revisit it at the time. And then, life got in the way. We went separate ways. We lived our lives in the folly of some of the mistakes that we made in 1985. And a couple of years ago, we crossed paths again, and I had written an article about the encounter, which was just totally erroneous, had really very little to do with anything that really happened, because my memory was very poor about it. I had shut most of it out of my memory. And Robbie sent me this email out of the blue and says, "You got that all wrong. This is what really happened." And then we started talking back and forth with email, and then we were texting each other, and we decided it was time to write it. I had established myself in the paranormal community at that point as a researcher. I had a reputation, and we decided, you know what, if we write this, maybe people will believe that it's true because it was true to us. And if they don't, at least they'll read it and enjoy it as a good story, which it is. So from that point forward, that's when we started to seriously start outlining the book. And as we began outlining the book, memories started coming back. And literally through the whole process, one of us would say something and it would trigger a memory recall in the other. And, you know, I remembered things that didn't even tell Robbie at the time. And it would come through and I would go, oh my God. And he'd go, what's wrong? And I go, you know, I never told you this, but, and I would tell him. And then that would trigger something in him that he was fuzzy on. So the process of writing the book actually took us about 2 years. And the process was because we rewrote the book 10 times, and each time we rewrote it and read through it, it would trigger more memories of what had happened. And eventually, I mean, I think we have most of at least the high points, you know, are recorded. So the motivation was to show people what could happen.
Okay.
You know, to show people what the reality of a real demonic infestation was, and how a lot of things that people think work don't work, and the journey of trying to find out what would.
Okay. Now, Robbie's turn. Let's handle that from your perspective.
You know, I think a lot of it is definitely what Dave said. We weren't in a position to write the book. When we were first done with it, there were certain ramifications and fallouts from writing the book that I don't think we would have been able to deal with without the years and the wisdom that years bring you. And again, I think the biggest reason we felt the need to put it out right now is because you hear the demon word everywhere, and everywhere you turn there's a demon. It's all over the TV, so it must be true. But these guys are going out there and they're searching for things, and a lot of the groups that are out there are strictly out there to debunk. And, you know, it's a fun word, but when you finally reach that point where you've got something that you can't debunk, you know, what's to keep it from coming home with you and playing with your children and that kind of wonderful thing. It's just, it's not pretty. There's really evil out there, and we felt that people should know.
Yeah, you know, about that debunk that you mentioned, and I see a lot of it, and I think David already knows. I've been in many groups on many social networks and made enough rounds to see plenty of debunkers out there. And, you know, I think people need to stop and realize there's a big difference between somebody that's a critical skeptic that questions everything and tries to make sure that he's not just buying into any line whatsoever, and a debunker who wants to go and just destroy anything or try to discredit anything based on the fact that it does not match their ideology or their belief system, in other words.
Right.
And, I mean, if you're just out there doing that, you're doing more harm than good. The critical skeptic, I think, is more of a constructive participator that really helps the understanding better in the long run, even if he can be a pain sometimes. I don't know. What do you two think?
Well, you know, in all honesty...
Whoops.
Go ahead, Robbie.
Well, in all honesty, and I'm sure Dave will agree with this, we work in the entertainment business, and I still do work in the entertainment business. I have a stack of sheets that I've signed for so many different magicians and mentalists over the years. I will be the first person out there to see what they're trying to do to trick me. I mean, I will be skeptical for no other reason than I know all of the ways that a magician can fool you and make you think you're seeing something that's unreal. And I think that really, you know, I'm a skeptic first. I really have to see it with my own eyes, and I have to experience it before I will even give paranormal things any credit, quite honestly.
I bet you and David, either one, could probably tear apart half of Chris Angel's tricks.
Uh-huh.
I like that, uh-huh. That sounded pretty confident to me.
Well, I mean, it's illusion. And like anything else, you have something that you do that takes people's attention away from what you're doing. And that's really what magic is about. It's illusion. And the thing is when, I will tell you one person that we did do that to this day still amazes me, and that was the amazing Kreskin. And he claims to be a mentalist. And he lives right here in New Jersey, as a matter of fact. He's still alive. He's an older fellow now, and he doesn't live too far from me. But he had a deal when he came in his contract that if he couldn't find his check when we hid it somewhere in the hall, we didn't have to pay him. And how he did it was, as he came in, we had two students that had no contact with him or whatsoever that were randomly picked, that would guide him while he had a blindfold on, and damned if he didn't walk right to where his check was hidden, it was taped under a seat, a folding chair.
Oh no, wait. Do you remember? It was actually, that was the weird part. We decided to make it extra special for him.
Yeah.
And he picked up that chair. He looked everywhere around that chair, and it was stumped for a minute. Then they made him roll back the carpet.
Yep.
And that's where it was.
So technically it wasn't taped to the bottom of the chair. It was under the carpet, under the chair.
It was under the carpet. We started out first taping it under the chair, and Robbie and I moved it. And because we decided that wasn't good enough. and just to add to it, because the people that hid it had already hid it and knew and left, we decided
you waited till y'all were there alone and...
Yeah,
did your dirty work where only you two would know?
Yeah, so we thought we would be cute, and hide it. And he first of all, he went right to the area, and then eventually he did find it. But he was very amazing. And to this day, I can't explain some of the stuff that he did.
Wait, now you have to tell the best story about the whole night, Dave. The best part was we were in an enclosed booth. You couldn't see where we were. We were up above the audience, but we had full view of everything that was going on. And Dave and I started, what did it? We decided to start running porno films through our minds.
Right.
Just, he's a mentalist. He says okay, let's see what's, and so he's going around doing his whole spiel, and he stops in the middle of it, and he's looking around, and he goes, there's some people here. I don't know what to say about them, but their minds are certainly in the gutter. And I know Dave and I, we lost it.
But to his credit, to this day, we never did figure out how he did what he did.
Well, go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
And I'm just saying, I really respect Kreskin. I have no idea how he does what he does. We could not figure it out. We tried a lot of different things to befuddle him, and they were just stumbling blocks for him. He eventually worked his way around everything we tried to do. So he definitely has something going on that we can't explain. But other than that, everybody else, we did a couple of magic acts when we were there, and it's illusion. And there's tricks in the equipment that's used. There's a lot of things that are done to give the impression that it's one thing when in actuality it's something else. This was not the case in our situation. Our situation was something completely different, and it didn't just affect us, it affected people around us.
Okay. Well, Dave, I got to tell you, after seeing some of your Facebook posts, I can definitely attest to your dirty mind.
Well, my mind is suggestive.
Oh, yeah. That was
everyone else's mind that's dirty.
It was very suggestive, like that picture of that lady who it looked like, well, you know what it looked like, but it was really her feet.
Yes. Yeah, that's called suggestion. See, because everyone else had a dirty mind, I put up a picture of a woman's feet put together, and it looked like something else, and everybody thought it was something else.
I got to tell you, I had to share that one, David.
It was really a down view of a woman's feet put together. So, yeah, the power of suggestion is a very powerful thing, and most magicians use it. They lead you to believe one thing while they're doing something completely different. And that's the whole magic of magic.
So you two could be magicians if you wanted?
No.
Okay,
I could not be a magician because I couldn't pull it off with a straight face to save my life. I laugh too much about what I'm doing.
Well, you know what, David? I can see that because how much you was pulling your stunts on Robbie in the book and laughing at him.
Well, see, the shamanic path or the medicine path, whatever you want to call it, you have to trick the person into learning, because the problem is we've been raised to believe the world is a certain way. And because we've been raised to believe that, it's so. We make our own reality. And the world isn't anything like we believe it is, because we believe in a description of the world that's been handed down to us since we were a child, since we were barely able to be cognizant. We were explained to over and over again what everything was. And, you know, the earth is this and it's that, and the tree is solid, and really nothing is solid in our world. But because we believe it to be so, we create a reality. And the whole path of the shamanic journey is to learn that the world is nothing like we've been told it was, and to drop that description of the world completely, and to learn what it really is, and to be able to interact in that reality. And that's why another term for it is a separate reality, because it's still the same earth, but we're seeing it the way it really is, not the way we believe it is.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, you had mentioned in that book, 10 or 15 or more times about reality and its illusionary status. Not in those exact terms, but I'm talking about it was a recurring theme throughout the whole book, in other words.
Right. That's correct.
Along with the importance of, I guess you'd call it building up energy. I forget the term you used in the book, the exact term.
Power. We called it power.
Yeah, power.
Stalking power.
What'd you say, Rob?
Stalking power.
Stalking power, okay. I forgot the exact wording y'all used in there, but yeah, I remember that's everywhere that Dave took you, it seemed like that's what you were there to do, but he always had to send you off alone after a certain point. Couldn't go all the whole 100 way with you, in other words, 100% of the way. So these experiences, I take it, are meant to be a personal experience then?
Absolutely.
Well, every one of the learning experience, everybody's path, especially on a shamanic path, is their own. There's similarities. There's places you go that are alike. But everybody's path is unique to themselves. So there's a certain point, and there's also in these kind of teachings a lot of the time, especially at the beginning, what Dave was doing for me was he was giving me a little bit of his power, his energy, and then it was up to me to take that and to turn it into something more tangible. So in that moves on. If you deal with any of the Eastern beliefs, there's a thing called transmission. In every true teacher, there's a transmission of energy, a transmission of power that allows you to step up into that next state of learning that you need to reach. So a lot of it was Dave giving me his energy so I could then go and follow the path that I needed to follow to get to the point we ended up in the book.
Well, I know that even in the Bible, they consider laying on of hands to be a means of transferring power. And even in the church, they consider it as a means of transferring the Holy Spirit. They also consider breathing on people or into people or whatever another means of transferring this kind of power, in other words. So it's a fairly common belief even on the West, I think.
Well, I think it's really the terminology, because in my personal belief, I think that the word chi is the same as the word orgone, is the same as the word prana, is the same thing as the Holy Spirit. It's that energy that we really can't put our hands on that's the true foundational vibration of the universe. It's the stuff that Tesla was working on, the free energy. It's the energetic potential of a vacuum. That energy that's available to everyone, it's just what words do you use to describe it? In Reiki, which is hands-on healing, it's just from a Japanese and Shinto Buddhist point of view, but it's still the same thing. It's a hands-on healing where you're taking the Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, and you're channeling it through yourself. And it's not any kind of magic. Any person can do it. Our bodies are made to actually do it. But as Dave was saying before, if you've grown up being told that, oh,
right.
no, then it's not a possibility in your reality.
Yeah, I think the whole secret is, and like you said, my understanding was for this power or this chi to flow through you, and you're just a tool, a channel, so to speak. But, I think like you also said, what's happened is in today's world, and I mean, this has been going on for like hundreds of years since the early church or the Catholic church started, is basically a dumbing down of people on spiritual matters, forbidding it, and then science jumped in on that boat and started making people that believed in it thinking they were crazy. Then parents jumped on the boat and started teaching their kids that people that believed it was crazy, to a point that by the time the average grown-up gets grown today, they don't believe in it enough to be able to tap the power if they wanted to. In other words, they would have to actually probably be born into a family that actually had some belief in it, that would actually teach the reality of it before a child can grasp it, or even an adult. What do you think?
I think that if you have the predisposition to be open to those energy flows, it's not really going to matter what family you're born into. Eventually you're going to break out and you're going to find your path. Or unfortunately you'll be like a lot of the people in the world today, just vastly miserable in your existence. But I think that the energy people, it comes down to this. We have a singular reality that we all agree with, that's the consensus reality. But everybody has their own subjective grooviness. Everybody has their own reality. And depending on, and again, we're going to my personal beliefs, depending on what you're going for or what you're here for in this life, what you need to learn is going to skew that subjective grooviness. And all of your upbringing skews it to where, even if your subjective grooviness does not allow for paranormal activity, it just won't flat exist no matter what. And you will always come up with something that will support your point of view, because people are very unwilling to break the reality, which is what Dave was talking about with tricking a student into learning. People are very happy with no change, even though we all know that that's all the universe is. But people don't want it to happen. They don't want change. And then to put them into a point where the change is going to absolutely change their reality, it's a very frightening thing for most people. You think so, Dave?
I agree.
Well, Dave, was it challenging for you to put Robbie in that kind of position?
It was challenging for me because Robbie was my first apprentice. So I was emulating what was taught to me to him with my own spin on it. So okay. He was the first. So of course it was challenging for me because I had never had an apprentice before.
You talk like you've had some sense.
Yes, I have. But he was the first. And so in many ways, he taught me how to teach an apprentice, being the first one that I taught. And every apprentice is different, and you treat each apprentice individually. In other words, what works on one person doesn't work on the other. So you have to find the path into that person's psyche or into that person's consciousness that works best for them, because it doesn't do any good. You can teach them all the secrets of the universe, but if they don't understand what you're telling them, it does them no good. So you have to demonstrate it differently. Each person requires demonstration. Each person requires the ability to experience what goes on. See, you can read 100 books about shamanism or Native American medicine or whatever, and you'll be very educated about it, but you won't be one. Because until you go through the experiences, you don't get it. You have to experience it. You have to live it. You have to respond to it. You have to interact with it. And the only way to do that is under the tutelage of someone who knows what they're doing and what's going on, because we're dealing with energies that are very dangerous. I mean, they can kill you. So the
that doesn't exactly sell the concept, you know.
Well, it's not supposed to sell it. It's not for everyone, in spite of what you read on the internet. It is for people who are predestined to do it. They are predestined to be that.
How does a person find out if they are?
Generally speaking, people, when they get into it, know right off whether it's for them or not, because if you're not into it, it will drive you crazy. It will frustrate you. It will make you throw things. It will make you angry. It's not for that person. Part of the process is tearing down that person's reality, literally ripping their reality and their perception of reality out of their consciousness. And not everyone has the mindset to endure that. It threatens people. Some people, it falls apart. And I don't care what anybody says. If you don't do that, you're never going to be a medicine man. You're never going to be a shaman, because you have to rip that reality out. You have to take all of that out by the roots and rebirth yourself into a new awareness in order to do that. And people are very strange about things like that. So people can be very threatened. And it takes a great deal of dedication. It takes a great deal of trust in the teacher. To know that even though this person's telling you to do something that you know is just absolutely insane, that you have trust that they know what they're doing and you do it anyway. Robbie did that.
Wouldn't one of the fears maybe be the fear that you're insane for thinking about it, or going to go insane if you try it, or worried that people will think you're insane? And that kind of thing.
Ask Robbie what he thought. I mean, don't ask me. I mean, my experiences were 20 years older than Robbie, so, you know, I'm a shaman creation of the time, just like Robbie is a shaman creation of that time.
I had no idea there was such a big age difference between you two.
Well, there isn't so much of a big age difference between us, but I started out a lot younger when I started. I was in my early 20s. I mean, early 20s when I started. Robbie was a bit older.
I got you. So, Robbie, what was the part about it that may have scared you, if any?
You know, see, I'm probably not the right person to ask that specific question because it had been something that I had been interested in really my whole life. I'd already had several psychic experiences. I was really, really empathic. In fact, I think a lot of my problems growing up was how empathic. Do you know what the game The Dozens is?
I know when we were kids we had a thing called the Dirty Dozen, but that was an exchange of cut downs.
Exactly. That is the game. Growing up, I was the one person you didn't want to play that with. Because somehow I would immediately find the most devastating thing that could possibly be said to you. And it wasn't even a conscious thing. I mean, I would just pick these things out of the blue. And I was predisposed towards the path. For me, sanity has always been a lightly held object, if at all. So for me, that really wasn't the scariest thing. I think truly for me was realizing that we weren't dealing with ghosts. And through the whole experience, in all honesty, I was so shell-shocked that I don't know that I was able to be afraid. A perfect way to discuss the shamanic training, it's a lot like making a Marine. You know, what does that drill sergeant do? That drill sergeant takes you out there, and he exhausts you. He breaks you down. He puts you into a little pile of clay, and then he builds a kick-ass soldier out of you. In a way, that's what the shamanic teachings are like. The teacher takes you out. He works you until you are so exhausted that you really can't think straight, And then he blows your mind, but you're so exhausted that your mind being blown isn't so bad because you're really not sure what's going on, and then your body has a chance later on to absorb it in. But there's a lot of similarities between shamanic training and marine training.
Oh, I would imagine there probably is. But I also remember during reading that book that almost each and every place that David took you for power, at least at some point during the exercise, you were expressing fear in the book at one thing or another. So it seems like there was some at different points, I guess you could say.
Well, it was constant. I mean, there was an underlying terror the whole time, but you couldn't allow it to take hold. Because if you really thought about it, your feet would be frozen in place and you wouldn't be able to move.
Okay. Well, did you ever finish your training? I mean, as far as under David's apprenticeship?
I finished with Dave, and it's an amazing thing. The great axiom that when you're ready, a teacher will appear. Shortly after Dave had finished training me with what he knew, I had always said all my life I wanted to learn Tai Chi because I thought Tai Chi was the best martial art you could possibly learn. And just after Dave we had started moving in different directions, I actually had, the gentleman's name is William Smith, Bill Smith. He's one of the best Tai Chi teachers in the country. He actually moved in across the street from me. And then of all weirdness, it just so happened that his Tai Chi teacher and his spiritual guru at the time, I got to meet him, and he was a shaman who at one point in time was actually the Dalai Lama's personal bodyguard. So, I mean, I went from incredible teachings from Dave to incredible teachings from John Milton and incredible teachings from Bill Smith, and it's really been an interesting journey, and quite honestly, I have not finished my training. I'm not sure when I will.
I was about to say, I don't think there is a finishing to the training.
No.
There isn't, but the journey's been really
I think
incredible.
that's what it's all about is the journey.
It is.
Absolutely.
It's the path.
I would imagine then after this Tai Chi training, you're not the person I want to mug at the mall.
Well, it would be interesting. But, that's the thing. When you take the high-level Tai Chi training, you take the incredible shaman training, I would tend to think that it would be a very rare instance that I would be in a position to be mugged at the mall. I can usually feel that coming up. And I have had in the past where I've made eye contact with someone who I know if I hadn't had the little twinkle behind my ears, and hadn't turned and looked, that, there could have been a chance, but, that's the one cool thing about being on a spiritual path. You're not alone. You get help.
I don't think you have to be a shaman for that one. I mean,
absolutely not. You're
talking about something I think is common amongst many, probably more people than it's not common amongst, is that little thing that you don't know why, but something's getting you to turn around and look back.
Oh, absolutely. That is in no way an isolated incident. But I think for me, the training has honed it to a finer skill.
Yeah. I will say this. I don't think everybody has, shall we say, like you say, honed the skill. It seems like there's quite a few people out there are in their own little zone. Everything else is like tuned out. And you might near drop a grenade in the back of their britches and they wouldn't know it till it went off if they even knew it then. Then you got other people that they may not be shamans or any kind of spiritual training, but they're used to keying into their instinct and their gut feelings and going by that. And they're kind of honed in pretty good because they had a practice of doing it on a regular basis. You see where I'm thinking about that?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the skills, though, everybody has something in their life that they're really, really good at. They haven't necessarily found it, but everybody has something they're really good at. On the other hand, these things like, again, Reiki, the hands-on healing, and your intuition, every single human has that. It's just a matter of, have they turned that switch on, and have they worked at it to make it a useful tool in their arsenal?
Well, I can tell you in my particular case, I've worked a heck of a whole lot on studying and learning and that, and I've read up on all these subjects like that description you were given earlier. However, also like that description, I've done actually nothing to actually experience it, in other words. I know a lot, believe a lot just based on, what I've learned, but have I actually experienced it? No, I have not. And I don't think that's really that uncommon either, though.
No.
Oh, no, not at all.
I do think it's good to, even if you don't, choose to, like take shaman training or something, to actually learn about the different spiritualities, different faiths, different religions. It's easier to get a clearer view of what's the right faith, of what's a more productive faith or a different religion, a better thing to associate with and try to learn from, if you actually get to know something about them, rather than going to one service and say, oh, I like it, let's come here more often.
Well, the very interesting thing is when you really dig deeply into every single belief system, they all tend to resonate in the same way. They really all tend to teach the same thing. When you take the words of Buddha and you take the words of Jesus and you lay them next to each other, they really lay out the same moral codes, the same deep truths. And that's,
oh, yeah, I have no doubt.
And the reality is, shamanism is it's a broad term. If you want to get down to the base root of, look at Taoism in China. Taoism is nothing more than Chinese shamanism, except they've been writing about it for 3,000 years, so they have it all cataloged and everything. But Gaia is in the real truth of shamanism is that nature is your teacher, and nature teaches everyone. Every religious leader in the history of man has gotten their truest inspiration from going out and sitting alone in the wilderness.
Kind of like the ancient Chinese and Japanese used to go out in the wilderness and watch the monkeys and the squirrel, and they'd be able to actually learn different ways to, do their martial arts based on the movements of the animals, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, even kind of the way that Jesus went out and spent the 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. And the same with Muhammad. So, and for that matter, Buddha didn't go out in the wilderness. He just parked his butt underneath a big tree and refused to move for quite a while until...
This is why he got hit on the head by an apple. Or did he?
No, well, there you go. See, there you go, the scientific angle. Isaac Newton got hit on the head with an apple, and all of a sudden we have the Newtonian laws. So
that's what I was doing. I was transposing Isaac Newton with the Buddha for some reason. Oh, I really had a brain toot on that one. But, back to about a minute ago, I want to clarify something I was saying. I've always known, because I've actually studied some of them, especially with all the dying gods myths out there, and I've seen the similar teachings between the Buddha and Christ. I've always known that they've all had a similar core value teaching. What I was actually referring to is once you get outside that core teaching, each one blossoms into a different animal beyond that, in other words. And that's what you got to watch out for. But yeah, the same core. And really, I agree with you that in one sense, a person could go to almost any religion and get this core value teaching if they know what they're looking for, is what I'm thinking.
Well, it comes down to what Dave always says about a path with heart. And again, for a long time, I was really down on organized religions, but I've met quite a few people in my travels that, if they had not found Jesus on that jail room floor, they'd be dead. Yet because they found Jesus, because they accepted him into their lives, they're still walking and talking. So it really has to do with the path with heart. How do you describe it, Dave?
I mean, the path with heart is effortless. And if you're not walking on a path with heart, you're going to know it pretty soon, because that whole path is going to be trying to kill you. And if you walk the path with heart, you smile. It's with ease. It's even though things come across your path, you deal with them effortlessly. If you're not walking the path with heart, you have a struggle the whole way, and half of the time, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and so the thing is that don't waste time on the wrong path, and you're going to know pretty quickly if the path's wrong, because it's going to try to eat you alive. If you start down a path, and all paths lead nowhere. You have to understand that there's a gazillion paths out there, and they all go the same place. They lead nowhere. It's the act of walking the path that gives you power. But you have to take the path with heart.
Going back to what we said earlier, you're not looking for a destination.
You're looking to walk.
Now, there was something I was just thinking a minute ago. Now I had a brain fart, so maybe it'll come back to me in a minute. But, you reminded me of a Babylon 5 episode where the Dr. Franklin, he got involved in too many sticks and needed to go find them stuff, so he decided to go on what was called a walk, where you walk and walk and walk until yourself catches up with you, and then y'all have a talk and you work everything out. So that what you're describing is maybe something sort of similar to that?
Well, I like that idea.
Even Forrest Gump said, one day, for no particular reason, I started to run.
I wonder what he meant by that.
Well, he just started running, and he ran across America twice in the movie, and then he said, one day, for no particular reason, I stopped. And he found what he was looking for. He was looking for enlightenment. And he reached a point where he realized that he had found it, and he stopped running. So, I mean, it's a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of spirituality. It's a journey that never ends, by the way. You may not run, but he walked away, so he continued to walk. So we are moving. We are dynamic people, and we're moving through reality. And the difference is the path with heart satisfies you. The path without heart destroys you.
Well,
and it becomes readily apparent, the difference.
That was a oops, sorry about that. I was going to say the role of Cleves, and I don't know if y'all manufactured that name for the purpose of the book or that was the guy's real name, but do y'all suppose that he was maybe, what would be the term, possessed himself, maybe?
No, he wasn't possessed. His girlfriend was possessed on occasion. We did witness that. He knew exactly what he was doing. The problem was he was in, I think, a little over his head. He did not have the command of his facilities like his grandfather had. And we believe today that most of the books that he had in his library belonged to his grandfather. Now, sure, he probably gathered more books living close to the University of Florida and students throwing things in dumpsters that they really have no idea what they're throwing away. And there's a good point in that, because he even mentioned that to us, that, you'd be surprised, how college students will throw valuable things away in the form of books. But most of the books that he had, he did not fish out of a dumpster near the university.
Not with the kind of titles I read in that book. I mean, he had some of the better-known, best memoirs or grimoires or whatever you want to call them in his collection.
And some of them are theoretical. Some of them are legendary, and no known copies are known to exist. They've just been mentioned in writing.
Yeah, like the Necrominion, I think, would be one of those.
Well, that's what's kind of fascinating about the whole story is we were always led to believe that the Necronomicon was a fictional creation of H.P. Lovecraft and that it didn't exist. And yet there's this whole legendary story behind it and all this. The book that we saw was not a new book. It was a hand-bound, leather-covered with like vellum paper copy. Something from perhaps at least early Middle Ages.
I was about to say, definitely existing long before Lovecraft.
Long before Lovecraft. And I was startled by it because I thought, wow, what an elaborate hoax, you know. However, it didn't appear to be a hoax. And when you opened it up, it wasn't like these things were printed. These were hand done. The symbols were hand drawn.
Like they used to do back in the Renaissance and before?
Right, and the writing also was not in English. That's another thing. So, you know, we're looking at this copy of a legendary book that is supposed to be a work of fiction, and yet it predates the person who supposedly created it.
Well, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, when you said what you just did, it just triggered in my mind that could it be possible that maybe Lovecraft knew that it existed and everybody else just assumed it was a fictional creation because they didn't think it existed and they just thought he made it up, but he knew he hadn't made it up?
You know, are you familiar with the writings of Howard, who created Conan the Barbarian and King Kull and all of these fictional characters and Hyperborea and all these mythical lands? Are you familiar with that author?
No. In fact, I never knew that Conan the Barbarian, which I've seen both the movies, Conan the Destroyer and Conan the Barbarian, were in book form before they were a movie.
Oh, years and years before. Robert E. Howard was the author. He lived with his mother. And his mother eventually died, and I forget whether it was from cancer or from what kind of illness. It might even have been old age. I don't remember the details, but he committed suicide after his mother died. But
33 years old.
Yeah, 33 years old. When he was writing those stories, he said that Conan was right there dictating the stories to him. And, you know, how do we know that H.P. Lovecraft didn't have channeled information coming to him to write some of his tales?
Yeah, like take Madame Blavatsky. She said the same thing. So did Alice Bailey.
Well, I have mixed emotions about Blavatsky because, I mean, she was pretty much of a... She was like in her day, she was more like well, anyway, let's just say that she had a lot of unscrupulous activity involved around her at the time.
In other words, kind of like she had motivation to be dishonest in her writing? Well,
I mean, she was involved with the Nazi Party. She was involved with some of their psychism that they were pursuing. And there's just a lot of unscrupulous activity around her that I don't know what to think of her. But, again, people get information. I mean, I've gotten information. Robbie's gotten information. We've had information emerge into our consciousness, and it has tended to be true. It has tended to be accurate. So who's to say that Lovecraft didn't have this information sort of flow into him in his creative writing process? I mean, Howard certainly admitted openly and was unabashed about it that the people in his stories were sitting next to him dictating the stories to him. And to me, that sounds like they were channeling information to him.
Well, you know, I had a guest here last year, the year before, named Timothy Willie. Matter of fact, or Wiley, he was a good guest too. But he was mentioning that everything that he wrote and typed was, you know, channeled information from the archangels back during the days of Lucifer, in other words, and when Earth was first taken over. Of course, the problem with channeled information is you can't prove it. And while you can't prove it, though, you don't really actually necessarily know for sure it's true or not true unless you've seen what parts of it have proven itself true over time, in other words.
And you also don't know what the source is. Because just because something tells you that it's this doesn't necessarily mean that it's that. And that's the other thing. I mean, you know, dark spirits aren't necessarily very honest about their identity or what they're telling you. And you know, if you don't know how to discern or you're not sensitive to that kind of discernment, I mean, you really don't know what the source of the information is. I mean, you can take it at face value just because someone says, "Hi, I'm Jesus, and you need to go check your air pressure." You may go out and find that your tire is a little low or something, but you still don't know for sure that Jesus told you that unless you discern that it is Jesus. And discernment is a power all of its own. That's also one of the disciplines that you learn on the path of knowledge, is you learn how to discern. And,
I love the way you put that.
And you often have to have refresher courses along throughout your life in it. Because when you don't use it, you lose it. And it's like anything else, you have to re-exercise the skills in order to be able to discern. And it can be problematic. And to this day, we have still been fooled. I've been fooled. Robbie's been fooled because we were not concentrating on our discernment properly. To discern, you have to be impeccable in your discernment because there are tricksters. There are energies out there that are very good at tricking you. In fact, they're excellent at tricking you because that's what they do. And they've done it for 100 millenniums. They've tricked humankind.
Isn't it also true that not every thought you have is your own all the time?
I don't agree with that. I believe we have free thought. I also believe, though, that we can have our thoughts influenced by external influences.
So they can kind of make you think that they're your thoughts.
That's possible, too. Again, it comes back to discernment. Like right. When a random thought comes through my mind, the first thing I think of is, where the hell did that come from? And oftentimes it isn't a random thought, it's an injected thought. And sometimes those are good, and sometimes not so much. As Robbie says, not so bueno.
Oh,
so, it's this discernment thing is a very important skill set that is part of the process of taking the path. And if you don't have discernment, I mean, you're literally, you're like walking around with a bag on your head trying to cross Fifth Avenue in New York during rush hour.
Blind leaders following the blind, or leading the blind.
Yeah, pretty much.
Blind leading the deaf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure when I asked you that a minute ago, but it seemed to me like it had to be possible that you could be tricked into thinking that a spiritual's entity's thought was your own thought when it was really theirs influencing your thought, or something of that nature. That's why I was asking you, because I think in some cases that's what happens to people.
Oh, absolutely. I would be inclined to think. I agree. This is just, a personal opinion, but I think 25% of people in mental asylums are not there because they're mentally ill. They are there because of the voices that are in their head, that are actual voices that are in their head. Unfortunately, science is not at a point, hurry up, Dave, to get to the reality of this so we can actually figure out which of those people are dealing with injected voices in their head and which of them are actually truly mentally ill.
Okay, why did you say hurry up, Dave?
Because Dave is the scientist. He's the man who's out there trying to get this wormhole thing going, and we really are at a point where we need to get proof of these things so we can actually really pay attention.
You're trying to get him to hurry up and get the proof.
Yes.
We can know something is so, and it's real to us, but sometimes we have to understand it by looking at it from a more provable perspective. And a lot of what we deal with deals with the human consciousness, which is probably the least understood aspect of human life. So, definitely there are things that have to be done scientifically, and there's very little work being done on this in science.
They don't believe in it, that's why they don't work on it. But
yeah, that's true.
I was going to say we're getting kind of low on time, and before we got out of here, I wanted to mention the fact that I personally believe that it's most likely that it is true that people are getting influenced from outside information, spiritual information, or something of that nature. I mean, it's been a ongoing thing since back in the days of Akhenaten and Moses when they were writing the Bible. They were called prophets. They were getting information from outside their own consciousness, and they said it was the Holy Spirit, the voice of God, angel of the Lord. But basically, it wasn't a flesh and blood man standing in front of them. And this was repeated all throughout the Bible and all the other different, varied religions and everything else. And it's still going on today. Why, if it's been such a repeated act for over 6,000 years, wouldn't you lend it some kind of credibility, in other words? I mean, am I making sense on that one?
Yeah, you are. I mean, of course it has to have some credibility, but credibility, again, is not proof.
Exactly. That's why I said almost believe.
Subjective. Yeah, it's subjective reinforcement, and to a certain degree, subjective reinforcement is important, but it's not the same as objective evidence. Objective evidence is pretty damning. Subjective experience, however, is variable, and it's variable based on the individual. So it's like we get often questioned about the book, about how we knew it was a demon. And it's unmistakable. I mean, we knew we weren't dealing with just a ghost when we set foot on the property because of the way we felt. But that was a subjective experience. It wasn't until we witnessed the jalousie window opening and closing without the handle turning that, we literally had physical evidence that there was something really bizarre going on. So, the subjective thing is do we believe it? Absolutely, we believed it. Did we need proof? Hell no, we didn't need proof.
Not
we
for
knew
yourselves.
What we were dealing with. Right. And we didn't have to prove anything to anyone else because we were helping a victim. But that isn't advancing our knowledge base of the field. Right. So they're two completely different things. In our case, we didn't do an investigation. We knew what was there. We didn't have to investigate.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that it was proven or, fact, though. I know better than that. I mean, anytime you state something as fact, you leave yourself liable to be able to have to be able to prove it because you stated it. The burden of proof becomes yours. And I'm very careful in most cases to try not to state anything as fact unless I know for a fact I can prove it. However, I don't mind saying that for this reason, I believe this is most likely the case because who can challenge you to prove that, in other words?
Well, it is. And there's some things that require proof, and there's some things that you don't require proof for. The act of finding proof for it now is more of a confirmation of what we experienced and what we went through than it is to try to prove anything for anybody else. The search now is to try to understand exactly what we endured and what we went through in a more scientific fashion. So while we're sitting here and we're discussing this, there is actually some research being done on the human consciousness now, and it warms my heart because there's actually real research money now getting poured into certain aspects of this area of science that has been so ignored for so long.
Yes.
So, I mean, we need to understand the mechanics of it because I have a feeling that it's going to open up an understanding of a whole new level of physics that we have had trouble with and have struggled with for, a couple of 100 years now.
It's interesting you used to say that, Dave. Just today, I found an article and posted it to Facebook where science has demonstrated brain-to-brain communication. And, what we're describing here is some unseen forces, I guess, brain transmission or communication to a writer's brain, in other words. This here is actually kind of like saying they're demonstrating that the phenomena is possible, not that it has occurred, in other words.
Right. Well, because they cheated. See, what they did was they implanted chips in the two test subjects, and the chips actually enhanced that connection. So they cheated, but the concept is that it's possible because there may be individuals that don't require that chip implant to do that, and we know that to be true. But the fact that they were able to recreate it in the laboratory environment by using an implanted chip to duplicate that connection only reinforces the fact that, yes, it is possible, and yes, there probably are people out there who don't need that chip to do it.
Well, yeah, and even if they did cheat, it also shows that the phenomena is worth further research and could possibly even serve a useful purpose in the future once it's actually learned.
Exactly. Now, these two individuals were 1,000 miles apart, so there's still a connection that the chips didn't make. All the chips did was tie into that process center of the brain. So, there's still something, voodoo going on there. There's still a quantum connection occurring there where this information, transferred utilizing quantum space. So, it's a beginning. It's a beginning to understanding.
You're talking like you read that article already.
Of course I read it already.
Oh, I didn't know you had already saw it. I mean, today was the first time I came across it.
The article actually came out about a week ago, and I read it as soon as it hit the press. It actually was, the experiment was done in the UK. But
that wasn't Russia like the article said.
No. There was one person was in the UK. It was, and I'm trying to remember what the university was. I don't know if it was Cambridge. I can't remember now. But it was, one person was in Russia, one person was in the UK, and the information transferred between those two individuals, but they didn't get clear information. When one subject was thinking of something, the other person was getting flashes of light in their head. So it was like their brain was acknowledging the fact that the other person was thinking. So it was a very crude, rudimentary exchange, but it proved that it's possible.
Which that could also go back to the fact that it may be dormant due to non-belief, in other words, or any other number of reasons.
Or our perception of the world, which brings us back again. I've had information come to me very crystal clear. So has Robbie. We've both had information come to us, and you can call it intuition, you can call it whatever you want, but we've had information come to us from externally, from our consciousness, and it's been accurate.
Yeah, I call those light bulb moments.
Well, one of the biggest problems with the paranormal research and the spiritual path is once you reach a point on the spiritual path, you get across from a lot of these paranormal investigators, and their whole attitude is a very prove it. You got to prove it. And once you've reached a certain point on the spiritual path where you start to have a control of some of these energies, it's not even worth your time to prove it. It's why. So I think that's something we kind of have to get over. I mean, every one of us who's been married at least a little bit knows that there reaches a point. I've reached a point now with my wife where, and I'm even working on this one, where I will sit there and I will think of something, and I won't say anything just to see if it's going on. And it's going on back and forth. We are talking to each other, and we are having these conversations. We know what each other wants. It's beyond just familiarity. We are definitely thinking something, and immediately the other person, it's coming out of their mouth. And it's why do we have to prove this? We don't. We know it happens.
Is that anything like when somebody starts a sentence, you know what the end of it's going to be before they get to it?
Oh, my God, Brandy.
Absolutely.
Brandy does that to me. I don't even start to talk. The other day, we were lying in bed, and I opened my mouth, and I didn't even say a word. I said a phonetic sound, and she answered me completely what I was going to ask, and it just blew me away. So she knew exactly what I was going to say. And she answered me, and she answered me correctly. So to say that that doesn't exist is bogus, because I've experienced it, and Brandy has a very close connection to my consciousness. I mean, she reads me like a book, and I read her the same way.
Well, isn't that similar though to somebody when they call you, you know who's calling? That's
a little different, because that could be premonition. you have to narrow it down a little bit in situations like that because you're dealing with a certain uncertainty principle involved with it. But in this case, I mean, I had formed the question in my mind and was getting ready to voice it, and I just said, and she answered me before I ever got the question out. And I just looked at her, and I'm like, oh, my God. I said, I can't even ask a question anymore. You answer me before I even verbalize it. She goes, oh, I'm sorry. She says, I'll be better.
Oh, you're still young in your relationship. We don't even bother anymore. It's not that we don't have anything to say. It's just that we don't have to say it out loud anymore.
I don't know. I've been married 28 years, and we still end up talking out loud. And I do mean very loud sometimes.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a time for verbal communication, and there's a time when it's not so bueno, you know. It's time when you need to, like, send messages to each other without other people hearing it. So, I mean, I understand it, and I accept it. I believe it. But the actual proving of it is something else, because all we have is subjective proof that it's occurring. We don't have the actual data that shows, oh, the brain is doing this, and the other brain is doing that. And that's what we need. And that's going to take stuff like CAT scans and MRIs and
research money.
Nature. Research money, expensive equipment.
Okay.
So,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, these are the drawbacks. So we can say it's not proven, but we can also say it's real.
Dave, I want to apologize for the times I keep stepping over you there, but you may not realize that you keep getting these little pauses, and I think you're through, and I go to speak, and then you speak again. So
I know. Well, see, I'm a trickster.
I just wanted you to know I don't do it on purpose, though.
Oh, I'm not offended by it. You have to raise your hand around Robbie and I.
Hey, you're getting a word in, Royce. You're doing pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys over there laughing, saying, I bet that dummy redneck here in Texas got his hand up in the air.
Always remember, my friend, just because I'm living in Nevada and Dave is living in New Jersey, you can take us out of redneck country, but I don't think you can take the redneck out of us.
I didn't know y'all had redneck in you till you just told me.
Well, I mean, we met in Florida, you know, in north central Florida. So we certainly were in the environment. I mean, I didn't require a ladder to get into my van, but there were people around us who did. So
my wife requires the steps to get up in the one.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, I can always claim that my grandfather was born in Hellhole Swamp, South Carolina.
Actually, I've been to Carolina. Keep forgetting and getting this mixed up. Dave, you can help me. It's the one that has Paris Island in it. Is it north or south?
Paris Island.
South Carolina.
South.
South Carolina.
Okay,
North Carolina has, what is it?
Camp Lejeune.
Camp Lejeune is in North Carolina. That's down there near Jacksonville, North Carolina.
Okay, then I may not have been to the one with Paris Island. I took my basic baker's course at Camp Lejeune. So that would have been what, North Carolina?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's North Carolina. That's near my favorite place in the whole wide world, which is Emerald Isle, which is just a gorgeous little stretch of beach at the very, very southern tip of the Outer Banks.
Well, I got to tell you, when I was in the Marine Corps and I was taking my basic baker's course at Camp Lejeune, I did like it there because I could go into town and go to the putt-putt golf course and play golf. It was right next door to the drive-in movie. You could hear it clearly from the golf course, and you could see the big screen clearly from the golf course. So I got to do two pleasures for the price of one every time I went, and I really enjoyed that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that area is kind of unique because the only grocery store within like about a 50-mile radius is near Camp Lejeune. I think there's either a Sam's Club there or a BJ's or I forget what it is, but because we would have to drive off of Emerald Island and drive over to Jacksonville to the only grocery store in the region to buy groceries when we were staying out on Emerald Island. So.
Well, until just now, I didn't know Emerald Island existed. I can tell you, I took my permanent duty station with Headquarters Company 5th Marine Regiment Camp Pendleton. So I got around to the military.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, Emerald Island is actually north of there. You go back around and start heading north, and it juts out across the bridge. I mean, it's like maybe a 15, 20-minute drive.
So it's like en route back into Tennessee?
Huh?
It's kind of like if you're going back toward Tennessee, but it's before you get there?
No. It's more like you're going up towards Virginia. You head west and then head north, and then you come to a bridge that goes across to Emerald Isle, and then you can take the island. Once you leave Emerald Island, you keep going north on the Outer Banks, and I believe you have to cross back over to the mainland several times before you get all the way up to Nag's Head. But it's more than midway down the state. It's the very southern tip. In fact, the beach on Emerald Island faces south when you're on the beach. That's how far south it is on the Outer Banks.
Probably gets a lot of hurricanes too, don't it?
Oh, I'm sure it does. But I mean, Emerald Island, there's no cheap houses there. They're all McMansions, and they're all rental properties. You know, people bring their families and they'll rent a property because one of these houses will have like 10 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms and big screen TVs in every room and all this stuff, and it's a really interesting vacation spot for a lot of people out of the Northeast because they're the only people that can afford to go down there on vacation.
I was about to say, it sounds expensive.
Well, a typical week in one of those houses will run you between $8,000 and $10,000.
Woo!
So what you do is you get like 4 or 5 families together and you all split it, and then it works out to about $2,000 or whatever a family, and then you just all stay down there for a week together in this big ass house. That's how we did it. You know, we had like five families would get together every year, and there were like 10 bedrooms, and there were kids, and some of the bedrooms had like multiple beds because they were like bunk beds and stuff in there and everything. So everybody lived a life of luxury for a week and grooved on, you know, how the upper class lived. And we had to carry that thought with us for the other 53 weeks.
And then you also
51 weeks of the year.
Didn't get any privacy either, did you?
Oh, no, it was incredible privacy because the houses had a hot tub. They had a swimming pool. They were 20 yards from the beach. So there was a multitude of things that you did. And even in the house, these houses were huge. I mean, literally, most of the time, everyone was outside or doing something, and often I was in the house by myself. So, I mean, there was plenty of privacy, and the house is so big and laid out that it's really not a problem. And these houses are like I say, they're huge. And you know, they have a hot tub that's as big as, you know, big enough for like 10 people to get in.
Wow, that's big.
And then big swimming pools and all that. So, you know, it was easy to get the kids preoccupied and send them off somewhere because most of the kids were like teenagers anyway.
Well, guys, we've overran about roughly 13 to 15 minutes so far, and I just got a message from my wife on Skype wanting to know, are you wrapping up? She just got back from Wednesday night church, and I guess she wants to meet with me and spend some time being together for mommy and daddy time before we go to bed tonight. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to call this one here a wrap. But before I do, is there anything you guys would like to mention that maybe I didn't get a chance to cover? You got any last minute thoughts or anything like that?
Dave, please you have a last minute thought. Give them the news.
Uh-oh.
Well, let me just tell you that our new TV show that I'm a part of called Ghost Stalkers premieres October 19th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Destination America. It's a completely different kind of paranormal show in the fact that it's unscripted, it's real, it's filmed as it happens, and it's filmed in high def, and it stars John Tenney and Chad Lindberg. I am a featured guest star on it that does this. I'm like Bill Nye the Science Guy in the paranormal on the show. So I do experiments and stuff. And again, you know, buy our book, Demon Street USA. You can get it at your local Barnes & Noble store, in the store. I'm not sure if it's still on the new release table, but if it's not, it's certainly going to be on the shelves, and if you ask, they can get it for you because it was on the new release table.
And if you don't feel like going down to the store, come to my webpage and scroll down beneath their description, and you'll find a link to Amazon where you can order it through there. Please don't go straight to Barnes & Noble or the other one if you're going to order it online, because I get a commission if you'll click on it from my site. Sorry, I had to throw that in there, Dave.
Oh, absolutely.
That's fine. We don't care what site you buy it from, but it's available on all the online bookstore sites. It's available at independent stores, and it's also available in 11 foreign countries. And through Amazon parent company, it's available internationally.
So the sales on it is doing good?
We don't know. We won't know until we get our first royalty check. But I feel like they're doing pretty well. I mean, I know Amazon is constantly restocking. I know that several brick and mortar Barnes and Noble stores have had to restock. So we are selling. We just don't know numbers yet.
So,
and I'll tell you, Royce, when you get your copy, we are having a selfie contest.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook, and I already got my copy.
But I didn't mean to beat everyone to the punch. I, of course, went to the old Washoe Club, and so I got that one first. But there's still a lot left in Virginia City, but we want people to go to the scariest, creepiest places they can find and take that selfie so we can see how the book's getting around.
Yep, and we want people to post them on the Facebook site for Demon Street USA. And you can get that link from demonstreetusa.com. Click on the selfie contest, and it will tell you the rules and tell you where to post them. And at the end of September, we will choose the winner and send them a groovy little package of trinkets and gifts.
Stuff. They will get stuff.
Yes, stuff.
Actually, trinkets and gifts sounded better than stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what that stuff is going to be yet because we're still putting it together, but it's going to be stuff.
Okay, because stuff sounded a lot like junk.
Then trinkets and gifts.
Yes, I'm cleaning out the office now as we speak and sweeping it all into a box. So,
well, that makes it more enticing.
Yeah. No, there'll be some cool stuff in it. So, but anyway, that's the deal. We're having and we think it'll be cool to see people holding their copy of a book in a creepy place. So, what better thing to do than to have a contest?
Well,
I would love to see somebody in Lep Castle. That's one. I think that's a goal we should have, Dave.
Where is that?
In Ireland. It's one of the most haunted places in Europe.
I don't think I'm up for traveling overseas.
Well, I think that gauntlet is being laid for the Irish who may be reading the book.
Well, tell you what, guys. It's been a pleasure having you, just like it was at Revolution Radio. And Dave, it's always been a pleasure to have you. Robbie, I haven't forgotten about you, guy. I ended up in the hospital for a while again and got back out, and I've had to be doing some repairs on the YouTube archives because the Revolution Radio's channel over there, somebody had got them in trouble with YouTube saying that they were spamming when they weren't, and they took their page down. And now I had to come in there and pull shows out of the archives and copy them to my archives and re-upload them to my channel at YouTube to make sure I can make them accessible for everybody, in other words. So, as you can imagine, I've been playing a lot of catch-up on top of everything else, and that's why you haven't heard much from me.
But, well, I hope you're feeling better.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing much better than I was now I've had the antibiotics. Or should I call them the doctor's wonderful little cocktails? But, guys, I'm going to be back in touch with y'all in the future, especially you sooner than I will David, since David's been on my show by himself a few times and you haven't yet. And I'm still looking forward to a one-on-one talk with you, Robbie.
Oh, I'd really look forward to that. That'd be a pleasure.
All righty. Well, you guys, y'all be good for what's left of the week. And just to let everybody know, come see me tomorrow at Revolution Radio. That's at freedomslips.com. And I'm going to be interviewing Fritz Zimmerman, and it's going to be about the Nephilim Chronicles. And he's been taking pictures of giant skulls and skeletons. I don't know why I'm doing that, but at any rate, that were found in Ohio that he thinks can be traced back to the Nephilim that were mentioned in the Bible. That, you know, just basically you don't see much of those in the museums these days. They've been kind of I know the Smithsonian's been accused of covering that kind of stuff up. I haven't investigated it myself, so I don't want to say that, but that's the rumor. I'll put it to you that way. You guys happen to know anything about that by any chance?
If I did, I wouldn't tell you, because if I did, I'd have to kill you. So,
you know, when you're doing your research, there's a really famous story from right here where I'm living right now by the Paiute tribe, where they talk about finally getting tired of the red-headed giants, so they trap them in a cave and they burn them out.
That's interesting you said red hair, because my research has indicated that all the Nephilim that are mentioned in the Bible were either red or blonde hair and blue-eyed and extremely white. And they kind of like the Nordic types you might read about online that people are saying from outer space. Some people think that they're the Anunnaki. Well, I'm pretty sure you guys have read enough on the internet to know it's a long, drawn-out discussion, in other words.
Well, supposedly one of those skulls is in one of our local museums here in northern Nevada.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mind seeing that. Have either you two saw it?
I haven't seen it. I have a friend who they've done films on it. They kind of keep it locked up, but it's actually a very famous story among the Indians in this area.
Well, is this skull elongated by any chance?
I believe it is one of the elongated ones.
Which is
I'll tell you what. I will do my research and I'll give you the information that I can find.
Yeah, if you would please, because the interesting thing about that would be that Akhenaten's skull was also elongated, and I'm getting 50-50 tales about Moses that some say it was elongated, others say he had horns. Who knows? He might have been both. But you don't see a lot of pictures on it, at least especially not in the Bible. Who's to say what's true, what's not? But, you know, still you get enough testimony about it, it gets more and more interesting. At least to me it does. So
I agree.
At any rate, like I say, come see me tomorrow. We're going to be talking to Fritz Zimmerman about these here giants in Ohio, and I think he thinks they were the mound builders. I've read about it before, you know, from other people, but we'll cover that during the show. And you guys, y'all be good, and I'm going to try to switch that link to the website to the Demon Street USA, and I'm going to try to point some people over there to take that selfie. When does the selfie contest end?
I think it's the end of September. I think it's September 30th.
September 30th, so...
Yes, but we may extend it depending on how many entries we get.
Okay.
So,
have y'all been getting entries so far?
We have a few. We'd like to get more, so we may extend it as we get the word out and see how it goes, because we really want it to be a good competition. So
people need to come to the page and register or something to let you know that they're going to be a part of it, or can they just show up with a selfie at the last minute?
All they have to do is to post their selfie on the Facebook Demon Street page,
okay.
And the link to it is on our page. You know, it's a Facebook link, so it's like, you know, all sorts of, you know, hieroglyphs and things like that in there. So we just give the link on the Demon Street USA on the selfie page, because we have the rules and what you have to do, and then we have the end time, I think, is September 30th. But depending on how many entries we get, we may extend it for another few weeks or even maybe a month. We'll see. Okay, so when you say these people had already registered, I guess you could say, or whatever, you mean they've already posted their selfies? They posted pictures. Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. I understand. All righty then. I'm going to wish you guys the best of luck. Y'all have a good night. Thank you for bearing with me with a show that overrode almost 30 minutes there. That just goes to show how good it was. And I think we actually all three enjoyed talking to each other. So, y'all
wonderful conversation.
I thought it was. I really did. But like I said, I'm going to go meet with my wife before I get in trouble.
There you go.
I have to live with her, trust me.
It was a pleasure, as always, talking to you, Royce, and have a great week.
You too now. Talk to y'all later, and I'll stay in touch on Facebook.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.